Hi everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be painting the operative version of Luke Skywalker from Fantasy Flight Games' Star Wars Legion. Today's guide is going to be split into 7 parts detailing every aspect of the miniature, from the clothes to the lightsaber. The first step we're going to take is to base coat all of the black areas of the miniature. This is the Jedi operative version of Luke, so that is quite a hefty portion of the model. For this we're going to be using Vallejo Game Colour Black, as you saw before. We're going to base coat all of his clothes, both of his boots, and he's got a glove on one hand. With that step now finished, we're going to highlight the clothing parts of Luke. This is going to be obviously the jumpsuit that he's wearing, or the jacket and the trousers. We're going to use Vallejo Game Colour Night Blue for this. In the box art for this version of Luke, he's got a sort of light blue, well, a dark blue lighting on his clothes, and I think this will replicate that quite nicely. Next up we're going to be brightening the night blue with some Mechanicus Standard Grey from Citadel. We're using grey here instead of a lighter blue so that the clothes read as black rather than blue, with really dark recesses. If at any point you feel that the black is reading far too blue, just glaze a really thin mixture of the original black over it and darken it back down. So if you like the way that highlighting black with blue looks, then after this video is finished, please consider heading on and watching my How to Paint Black Templars video. I again go through this in detail, as it's how I paint them as well. Link will be down in the description below. The final step to finish off Luke's jacket and trousers is to use an edge highlight of Citadel's Mechanicus Standard Grey. We're going to limit this to the very sort of innermost highlights and where the light would hit the most on his clothes, because if we use this too much we can really run the risk of the clothes not reading as black anymore and a more dark grey instead. For highlighting the flat surface on Luke's back, we're going to really make a sort of glaze consistency for the Mechanicus Standard Grey. We're going to use this and we apply it to the sort of upper middle part of the back, and then we're going to try and use a wet brush to sort of really blend in and really take the edge off so that it's far less noticeable. For the first sort of highlight layer we're going to be using Corvus Black. This will be really subtle, but it will help the transition between the black and the lighter greys that we'll be using later. With this colour we're going to try and start to line in a reflection, so we're going to try and really focus this where the light would be hitting it, and we're going to make it almost like a dull NMM effect to make the boots look nice, shiny leather. Next we'll be using Mechanica Standard Grey from Citadel. We're going to apply this to the same areas in a slightly smaller coverage than the Corvus Black in the previous step. This jump in brightness from the Corvus Black to the Mechanica Standard Grey will provide us with an effect that looks like shiny leather. During this step, if any of the new contrast we've made becomes too powerful or too potent, reel it back in by using a watered down mixture of the original black and try and blend the edges of it. This will really smooth it out and really dull that effect down. Next up we're going to be using Dryad Bark. This is going to be the base layer for the pouch on Luke's hip. Basically we're just going to be using this so that later on when we go over it with a lighter brown we don't have to use a wash, which will give us far more control. Now we're going to be using Mournfang Brown from Citadel. This is going to be applied all over the pouch except for the deepest recesses, giving us the effect of a wash but with far more control. For the final step of the pouch, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using Carrick Stone to highlight all of the edges. We're also going to be using this to sort of draw in some scratches and a bit of battle damage to make it look like worn leather. Next up we're going to be going back to Corvus Black from Citadel. However, this time we're going to be using it as a base coat for our non-metallic metals. Mainly this is only in the buttons on the belt, the buckle and the hilt of the lightsaber. I've chosen to go with Corvus Black as the base coat for our non-metallic metals here because it allows us, being so dark, it allows us to create a lot of depth between, or a lot of contrast, sorry, between that and the brightest white that we'll be using. With the Corvus Black now finished, we're going to be moving on to Vallejo's Cold Grey. We're going to be using this to put down the base tone for all the most reflective parts of the metallic, so the bits that are directly being hit by the light. Next we're going to move on to a 50-50 mix of Cold Grey and Dead White, both from Vallejo. With this we're going to start minimising where we're going to position the highlights that we're placing to try and create as much contrast as we can, basically following the shape of the object. So for example on the lightsaber we'll be really focusing it towards the centre point of the cylinder that we have chosen. With that step now complete, we're going to be moving on to highlighting the metallics. For this we're going to be using Vallejo's Dead White. We want to apply this to all the edges, or the most extreme edges that will catch the most light, and to all the central points of our highlights. Moving on to the skin, we're going to provide an overall base coat with Bugman's Glow from Citadel. During this step, make sure to get a very good coverage all over the skin and pay particular care not to get any of this on the finished cloth. With the base coat now complete, we're going to be moving on to highlighting the skin. For this we're going to use a 50-50 mixture of Bugman's Glow and Kislev Flesh. We're going to apply this to all the raised areas, making sure to leave the Bugman's Glow of the previous step in the recesses. This is going to allow us to not have to use a wash and give us far greater control. During this step, we're going to be laying down the foundation for the lightsaber's object source lighting effect that we'll be doing later on in the video. By this I mean we're going to apply more of this lighter mixture to areas that will be exposed to the light of the lightsaber. For example, the top of the hand or the side of Luke's face that you can see me painting here, as they will be naturally lit far more than the opposite sides, which will be slightly darker due to being in shadow from the lightsaber. The next section is going to be quite a short one. We're going to be using a 50-50 mixture of Celestia Grey and Mechanica Standard Grey to paint the detailing on Luke's jacket. This sort of folded over flap is going to be the inside of the jacket and therefore requires a much lighter grey. Now we're going to be moving on to my personal favourite part of the model, the lightsaber. This model is based on the Jedi version of Luke, so he has his green lightsaber. To start this, we're going to be laying down a base coat of Warpstone Glow from Citadel. This will really provide a nice base and make all the future greens pop. Next up we're going to be using Citadel's Moot Green. We're going to be applying this all over the lightsaber blade and the top of the hilt as if it were a base coat. Through my previous experience of painting lightsabers, I find starting with an intensely bright colour is always a really good option. Lightsabers are inherently bright and almost white towards the centre of them, so starting with these bright colours and working our way into white is what I've found to be the best technique. Next we're going to brighten up the Moot Green with Vallejo Panzer Ace's white. This is then going to be concentrated towards the central point of the blade. And with that, Luke Skywalker is complete. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then please hit the like button down below. It really helps out a lot. If you want to keep up to date with what I will be doing in the future, please consider hitting the subscribe button and turning on notifications by clicking on the bell icon. Thank you guys so much for watching and have a great day.